everybody. I am from the swamp. You got to be happy about how it's getting drained. It wasn't probably the way we anticipated it to get drained, but it is becoming drained on both sides of the aisle, and it needs to continue. You know, SD11, where's Miss Lopez? Right there. I'm glad you had your gloves on. And Kevin, you too. SD11, I've never heard of that. I guess it came out in 2011, 2010. See, I went up there in 2013, never heard of it. You know, this slush fund that's going on, never heard of that. Ron DeSantis sponsored that. We co-sponsored that immediately. That's why it's so important that you people are here getting educated to educate us, unfortunately. You know, there's about 40,000 pieces of legislation, resolutions, or papers that come out. There's a lot of busy work up in Washington, D.C. A lot of busy work. It's not productive work. And we need to change that, and that's one of the reasons we ran against John Boehner, and that's why leadership needs to change again, in my opinion. But the Stop Arming Terrorists bill, H.R. 608, was brought out by Tulsi Gabbard. She called our office. She and I came in together. She's a Democrat out of Hawaii, but she's an Army veteran that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, very focused. In fact, President Trump, or President-elect Trump, candidate Trump, invited her up to Trump Towers because of her strong stance on America. And she put this bill out there. We got on it immediately. Thomas Massey is on there, Walter Jones. But what we need is people like you calling representatives around the country, calling our senators to sponsor this as a co-bill in the Senate. These things need to happen, and we have been trying to pull in our AUMF, the authorization for use for military force, that we're operating today on in 2017, that came out in 2001 and 2003, that gives our government, without congressional consent, the right to go after any terrorist organization that was associated with 9/11. And as Kevin brought up, you know, these organizations morph. One begets the next. You know, ISIS came out of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda came out of what we did with the Taliban and arming the Afghan rebels back when they were fighting the Russians. There's going to be another one after this, and we keep funding this. We keep putting weapons out there. In fact, we've got a bill that got into the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, that prevented funding the Azimov Battalion in the Ukraine that are fighting the Russians. Now, that doesn't sound bad, fighting Russians. That's always a good thing. But they're a pro-Nazi group, and our government wanted to give them military equipment, including man-pads. And we're like, this is ridiculous. This is where we're at. And so this bill is a common sense bill, but what you'll find is common sense is not common, especially in Washington, D.C. And if it's not on the calendar or the docket of the leadership, we can't get anything through unless they want it through. And I'm going to sidetrack just a little bit. Our first bill we put in Congress called the Trust Act, trust restored to the U.S. taxpayers. We put it in February 2013. What this bill says is that if you're a member of Congress and get convicted of a felony while serving, you lose that portion of your tax of your retirement that comes from the taxpayers. Now, I don't know about you, but that same thing happens to people in the military and law enforcement. If they break the trust of the people they're serving, they lose their benefits, dishonorable discharge. They get no benefits. And if that applies for the man and woman that is willing to put their life on the line for this country, by God, it ought to apply for people up there. But The bill H.R. 608, this is something that's real serious that we need to bring it to an end. The AUMF that we're using allows a lot of this to happen. Heck, we could be using the AUMF Thomas Jefferson used to go after the Barbary pirates back in the 1800s. I mean, we really could, because it's so elastic and it's very poorly defined. And every time we bring this up, I've been on bills with Barbara Lee, two opposites as far as you can get on where we stand politically, but on this we stand together. We cannot get leadership to bring this up. We had a bill that would stop armed drones from being used by anybody but the United States military. Understand now, you've got these clandestine or organizations and agencies, the alphabet agencies that we don't know about. They're using armed drones. We're paying for the price of those armed drones. And so we wanted to bring it from these agencies to DOD, Department of Defense, and if you use an armed drone, the Defense Department has to take responsibility of it. And it's like, you dang right, that came from the United States of America. You want another one? Because that gives credibility and accountability, whereas these agencies are out there allowing them to be used or being used by other governments. Our government is sponsoring, or not sponsoring, but providing cluster bombs to the Saudis. The Saudis are using cluster bombs, not in accordance with how we would use them. Cluster bombs are things that blow up, and just like they say, they do a lot of damage in a wide berth. And we're sending them there, and we had the Saudi, one of their representatives there, and I didn't get this question to be asked, but I wanted to, and this is the question. You know, because they said, well, you guys use these things. You're right, we do. Not very often, but we have. But when we use them, it's the United States of America, and we take responsibility for that. When you use them, you don't take the responsibility, and they know it came from the United States of America, and so we're going to pay for that. And we have been kicking a beehive, and we're getting stung, and we need to bring our foreign policy very direct and very succinct of when America engages and what it stands for. And I want to spin off of Kevin's talk. When the government oversteps the boundary of the Constitution is not a function of government. Government is a function of the Constitution. And when the government oversteps the boundary of the Constitution, it is our duty, it is our right and our privilege that we change government. And that's, I think this last election was spot on. You know, I was up there, you know, and I know a lot of you know my story. I'm a veterinarian, never been to a town hall meeting, decided to run against a 24-year incumbent that had $2.5 million in the bank, 72% name recognition, and I had none of that. But it was because of the grassroots that sent me up there, and I was at a meeting when we challenged John Boehner. You don't get a lot of friends in Washington when you do that, but that's okay. I didn't go up there for friends. I've got my wife with me. And this was going into that election year of 2016, and my class president, who's running for senator now in another state, he goes, you know, there's 40 or 50 people in Congress today. I don't even know how they got in here. In fact, they shouldn't even be here. I kind of took that personally. I don't know about y'all. So I told him, I said, Luke, I says, I'll tell you how I got here. I got 65% of the people in my district that wanted me up here. And I says, in case you haven't realized, Donald Trump is ahead of every polished politician up there running. And the American people are saying they want to change, and y'all better wake up here. So I'm glad he sent them up there. What we need you all to do is just, you've done a great job. This group here, you know, we came out of the Tea Party movement. People think that's dead, and I'm like, dead? Where y'all been? I said, in case you haven't seen, Donald Trump's the epitome of the success of that. I'm going to tell a quick story, and then I'm going to end on something. I also sit on the Ag Committee, and I'm on Foreign Affairs, and I chair the Asia Pacific Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs. And I was in the Ag Committee, and we had all these producers in there, the pork producers, wheat producers, and all these people whining and complaining about NAFTA. Oh, woe is me, the president's going to pull out of NAFTA, and oh, we're going to lose our pork exports to Mexico. We're going to lose this, and they're all crying. And all these congressmen were like, oh yeah, this is terrible. We need trade. We need to make sure you stay in there, and we're going to make sure the president doesn't do this. And it came my turn to ask a question, and I said, listen to y'all. I said, y'all belly aching and crying and moaning, woe is me. And I think I even said that, woe is me. I says, because the president is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to pull out of NAFTA. He was going to renegotiate it. And I said, shame on you people. Yeah, it's been good for you, but in Florida it hadn't been so good. In North Carolina, in the textile industry, it hadn't been so good. I says, shame on you for not standing behind this president who said he was going to pull out of NAFTA, and the different organizations that y'all know, they were there. And I says, he is in office primarily because of the people you represent, and you'd better get behind this president and say, you dang right we need to redo it NAFTA. We do have a handful of us up there that are standing strong against the status quo. I'm a member of the Freedom Caucus, and that's a group of people that have what's best for this country at heart. And it is tough up there. I mean, the fights that we have, the way you get blocked out of things. When we ran against Boehner and we brought that coup down, we were told not to get on television, or the anchors were told not to invite us on there because there's other people they prefer to have on national television. The PAC community was told not to donate and support any of us. And that's the power we're fighting up there when you stand on principles. You know, folks, this here is a Declaration of Independence and our Constitution in total. This is it. And I think we'll all agree it's not an epic in volume, but yet it's an epic in ideologies of what free men, of what free men and women can accomplish in a country that follows these ideals. And these ideals are only viable today. I look at this front row of the World War II veterans, of the Korean veterans, of all of our veterans. Dang right, give them a hand. The only reason you're allowed to assemble, to say the Pledge of Allegiance, to stand up for our flag, to say a prayer, is because of the ideologies in this book that were paid for by the people like these people and their families and the people that came before them. God bless y'all, and take care. May God continue to bless these United States of America.